Greystone Regional Airport. Just after sunrise, Miles Carter stepped onto the plane with steady steps and sharp focus. He was a tech consultant used to challenging expectations and winning. But when he reached seat 1B, something wasn't right. A woman lounged across both seats, wrapped in a high-end shawl like she owned the sky. He paused. "Excuse me," Miles said, politely but directly. "That's my seat." She looked up slowly, expression unreadable, and replied, "Not anymore. I need both." The atmosphere tightened. Several passengers lifted their phones. Miles glanced around, his dark blue blazer already splashed with crimson. A flight attendant whispered something into her radio. No one knew whether the wine stain on his jacket was an accident or a message. But this wasn't just a seat dispute. It was about control, race, and power, all unfolding at cruising altitude. Inside the cabin, sunlight bounced off the runway and spilled into the plane. Miles lifted his bag into the overhead bin, movements deliberate. The woman remained where she was, her sunglasses still on, her body language a fortress. Her name, as he would soon learn, was Lydia Kavanaugh. From behind him, a voice spoke up quietly. "That ain't right, man. You pay for it like the rest of us." The speaker, a salt-and-pepper-haired man in a charcoal suit, gave him a subtle nod of support. Miles nodded back, jaw tight. Then came a crew again. This time, a senior flight attendant named Rachel approached with purpose. "Ms. Kavanaugh, we're getting ready to close the cabin. Please move to your assigned seat," Rachel said professionally. Lydia didn't budge. "I get claustrophobic," she said. "I need the window. Are you going to be responsible if I have an episode?" Rachel's tone softened, but her meaning was firm. "We can help with that, ma'am. But you can't take someone else's seat. Please cooperate." After a long pause, Lydia stood up slowly, letting her purse drop loudly into the aisle as she muttered, "Unreal. Standards are dead these days." Miles took his seat. His hands were calm, but inside his thoughts churned. The wine soaked into his shirt. It smelled sharp, but it was the silence of the crowd that hit harder. As the cabin doors closed and the engines hummed to life, Lydia's voice pierced the quiet. "Is this supposed to be mineral water?" "I asked for Avance," she snapped, loud enough for the front rows to hear. Rachel gave her a weary smile and walked off. Across the aisle, Miles tried to refocus, opening his tablet to prep for a make-or-break client meeting. But the numbers were a blur. His mind drifted to his grandfather's voice telling him, "They may doubt you, but you don't ever doubt yourself." He felt the pressure of generations on his shoulders. Every look from the other passengers was a silent question. Would he fight back, or just take it? Midway through the flight, the situation took a turn. Lydia began criticizing her in-flight meal. This is what you serve. What are you feeding us? Do any of you even care?" A young woman with a laptop 2 rows up whispered to Miles, "You're handling this better than most would." He gave a nod, saying anything would only give Lydia what she wanted, an argument. But she wasn't done. Later, she motioned to a flight attendant and said, "I don't feel safe with him sitting next to me after what happened. Move him, or I'll file a report." The crew held their ground. "Ma'am, Mr. Carter hasn't violated any rules. You're both safe." That's when Lydia crossed a line. "My cousin is an executive with this airline. If you don't act, someone's losing a job." The attendant's response was quiet but absolute. "That doesn't change our policy, ma'am." Miles looked out the window. His hand trembled slightly. He pulled a small photo from his wallet, his mom and granddad standing on their porch back in Rockside. It gave him strength. Time moved slowly. The plane hummed on. A few passengers offered silent support, nods, glances. Some avoided looking altogether. But then Lydia flagged down the lead flight attendant again. "He's harassing me," she insisted. "I want him off this flight." The head attendant's reply was calm. Several people witnessed everything. "There's no harassment here, Miss Kavanaugh. Please enjoy the rest of your flight." Her voice dropped, filled with rage. "You're making a mistake. I know people." The captain's voice broke in over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're pausing cabin service as we handle a customer issue. Thank you for your understanding." The mood snapped tight. Everyone knew something bigger was happening. Miles's phone buzzed. After a brief conversation, He stood and asked quietly to speak with the captain. In the galley, he explained his role, not just a passenger, but a financial consultant with influence. He laid out the implications of unchecked discrimination on customer trust and brand damage. The captain nodded, took it seriously, and something changed. When they landed, the scene waiting at the gate wasn't normal. Senior airline staff stood waiting. Lydia Kavanaugh was asked to step off the plane first, for a quick conversation. She protested loudly, threatened, insisted this was unfair, but security remained firm. Passengers watched as she was walked down the jet bridge, her voice echoing behind her. Some clapped softly, others simply looked relieved. Inside the plane, the crew approached Miles. "Mr. Carter," the lead attendant said, "thank you for your patience and for staying calm. We're deeply sorry for what happened." Miles stood up, jacket damp, but head held high. "It's not just about me," he said. "It's about what's right." As he stepped off the plane, a young woman waiting in the terminal touched his arm. "Sir, you didn't just stand up for yourself. You stood up for all of us. Thank you." By the time Miles reached his meeting, footage from the flight was everywhere. Shared, retweeted, headlined. The airline issued a formal apology, announced new training, and revised passenger protocols. Lydia's frequent flyer status and internal connections? Gone. She was banned from flying with the airline again. News outlets no longer called her a difficult customer. She became a symbol of accountability. Miles still closed his deal that day, but something more powerful had happened. Something wider. This wasn't just about one man, one flight, or one confrontation. It was about drawing the line and proving that dignity, backed by quiet resolve, can break systems wide open. For others watching from the sidelines, it wasn't just his win, it was their validation. And as Miles walked through the airport, he wasn't alone. A nod from a stranger, a smile from a crew member, a whispered thank you from a father holding his daughter's hand. No, it wasn't just about a seat. It never is. It's about making room for fairness, for dignity, for everyone. In the days that followed, Miles Carter's name made its way into countless headlines, not as a celebrity, not as a victim, but as a reminder. A reminder that silence isn't the only option when you're treated as less. That dignity doesn't need a raised voice to be loud. His calm resistance struck a chord, not just with those on that plane, but with thousands watching online who knew exactly what it feels like to be dismissed, minimized, or made invisible. People from all walks of life, teachers, nurses, students, factory workers, shared their own stories. Not all of them went viral. Not all of them ended in justice. But Miles's moment gave those stories something rare: visibility and hope. The airline, under pressure, didn't just offer an apology. They overhauled their policies. They introduced new training for staff. And they issued a clear message: this kind of bias would no longer be tolerated, no matter who the customer was or who they claimed to know. As for Lydia Kavanaugh, her name became a cautionary tale. Her power, her threats, her so-called influence, all of it collapsed under the weight of truth and public accountability. What once made her untouchable became irrelevant in a world that had finally decided to stop looking the other way. But the story didn't end with punishment. It began with purpose. Miles didn't want revenge. He wanted a world where no one else had to fight this fight in silence again, where seats weren't just assigned on a ticket, but respected as a basic right, where presence didn't need to be justified, where quiet strength could dismantle loud entitlement. In the airport that day, Miles didn't walk out a hero. He walked out a man who did what was right, even when it would have been easier to sit back down and avoid conflict. And that's what made the difference. Because real change doesn't always roar. It often starts in a whisper, a steady stare, or a refusal to move. And when one person chooses to stand, it creates space for others to rise with them. This wasn't just about a seat on a plane. It was about who gets to belong and who refuses to let others be pushed out ever again.